So we gonna talk about gear right now, right? I ain't talking about that other shit, the sports enhancement. I'm talking about gear. Wrist wraps, wrist straps, back brace, whatever you use, right? Do understand, there's a time and a place for all of this shit. Are you supposed to use these things every time you work out? No, doesn't make sense. Because do understand, when using these things, they're actually breaking some of the resistance. So if you're someone who's actually looking to get stronger, do understand, this can lead to future issues. I've experienced it before. At one point I was training and I only used wrist wraps. Didn't even know what wrist wraps were for at the time. This is the earlier stages in my training, right? I just actually used them because I thought they looked cool as hell. But I noticed that my strength was I was a lot stronger when using the wrist wraps, anywhere between 20 to 30 pounds. So say for example, if I'm doing dumbbell chest press, maybe only able to handle 65, 70s. I noticed when I started using wrist wraps, I was able to handle 85, 90. And there came a point where I was watching an influencer and their philosophy was like, don't use wrist wraps, don't use any of this stuff. So for me, getting into the egotistic mindset that they were, preaching, I decided to do the same thing. But I didn't stop the weight that I was using. So within the course of me using the wrist wraps, I was getting stronger and stronger, right? I took the wrist wraps off and tried to handle the same weight, not knowing that because I've been wearing wrist wraps for so long that my wrists were weak as hell. I ended up getting a wrist injury that lasted 9 months. I'm trying to tell y'all, that was like one of the worst injuries I've actually ever had. I was able to recruit from it. As you can see, I can do a lot of what I do now. But I'm saying this to say this, there's a time and a place for everything when it comes down to using gear, when it comes down to the wrist wraps, whether you want to use straps, whether you want to use a brace, a back brace, whatever you want to use, right? Or a lifting belt. I'm not gonna say back brace, because a lot of people use the term back brace when we move in trucks and stuff, shit like that. But do understand there's a time and a place for a lot of these things. Should you use them every day? Hell no, you shouldn't. So if you come into the gym right now, I don't give a shit, you should not be using a back brace the entire time, because what this does is allow the area to get weaker. You need to make sure you're strengthening the area. If your doctor recommended in the meantime, meaning you have an injury or something like that, in the meantime you should wear it throughout the day, blah, 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 for certain hours out of the day, that's a whole different scenario. If your doctor recommended, you should be wearing it the entire time you work out. That's a whole different scenario. But I'm saying that the common folk that haven't had a doctor, a trainer, or anything tell you or recommend to use this, scale it back. And the reason why I'm saying this is because we're moving too fast, too early. So if we scale it back and focus on little things like strengthening the core, strengthening the lower back, because everybody likes to talk about stretch, stretch, stretch. You have to strengthen these areas as well in order to minimize the pain that you're experiencing. Like I said, with the wrist wraps and the weight belts, you have to be careful because, like I said, the main purpose of these items is to break a lot of resistance. So the reason why I like to use some of these items is because I train 5, 6, 7 days a week sometimes. And for me, if I'm going heavy 3 days out of the week, I like to use the weight belt. I like to use the wrist wraps. I like to use the wrist straps to break some of the resistance so my body isn't doing all of the work. A great example is if I want to hit arms and I hit chest or I hit back yesterday, it doesn't make sense for me to hit arms without using some type of wrist wraps or wrist straps to break the resistance, because I'm overtraining the body, which can lead to 1, injury, and 2, so much volume over time without breaking some of the resistance can tamper with the muscle you're trying to develop. So with that said, switch in, switch out when it comes down to using gear. And like I said, I'm not talking about your sports enhancements. I'm talking about wrist wraps, wrist straps, weight belts, and so on and so forth. Take them in and out your program. The more you take them in and out, the easier it is to get what you want. And like I said, you can use wrist wraps, wrist straps, and weight belts to break a lot of the resistance so that the area can get stronger over time. I do it all the time. Knee sleeves is one as well. I'm tired of people just using knee sleeves and they ain't even training legs. Like I said, unless you got some type of underlying condition, that's a little different. It's crazy. Every time I use this machine, I don't know why the fuck they put this pillow right here, but I always hit my knee on that shit. Oh, Side note, this is actually one of my favorite bicep exercises. And the reason why, I don't know if you noticed, when you generally do bicep curls on majority machines, you know what happened by the time you get all the way up here? You're hitting yourself in the head with the bar. One thing I love about this machine is, guess what? It allows you the range of motion to get that contraction on the bicep that you're looking for. So if you have this machine available, and this is an old school machine, take advantage, because you ain't gonna be able to get no contraction on your bicep like you're gonna be able to get on this one, mainly with the proper seat adjustments, because today is all about proper seat adjustments.